guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new I Don't Work Here Lady content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled I Do Work Here. We've literally been working together all day. So several years ago, I worked as a spirits consultant in a rather large regional liquor store. While the title may sound glamorous, apart from the occasional perk or being able to try a new whiskey while on the clock, I was basically a glorified cashier. I had just been moved to another store following a rather catastrophic falling out with a coworker at my original store, who had decided the best way to train me was to corner me in the warehouse and scream at me about how I was an utter failure and would never amount to anything in life. A story for another time. I had subsequently been moved to another location, roughly the same distance from my home. On my first day, I was quickly introduced to the store's management staff, as well as the floor crew covering everything else. It was midweek, ordering was done, and it was a slow store, so I spent the majority of my time rotating bottles in the aisles or up front by the cashiers. It was that kind of store. In truth, at first shift, we'd had maybe 20 customers store-wide over 9 hours. Hardly a rough shift, and there wasn't much to do. So my end of shift time rolls around, and I decided to grab a 12-pack with my oh-so-generous 10% employee discount and take it up to the register. Manned by a cashier I've literally been talking to all day. And then she asked me for ID. I'm in full company uniform, logo and all. We've been working together her entire shift. Bear in mind, this is a company that requires all employees to be 21 at minimum. Even customers have to be 21 to step foot in the building and buy potato chips. There's no way I'm underage. I ask if she's serious. She reiterates that she isn't sure if I'm of age and is required to check. I stare at my coworker, who clearly isn't all there in hand over an ID, which is where things get even more stupid. See, at the time my company had a policy that if you were under 25, a manager had to approve that your ID wasn't fake. So my coworker, in her infinite wisdom, calls for a manager. The very same manager who had introduced me to the entire staff a few hours ago. He comes over, seemingly confused, and asks what the issue is. She replies, maybe slowly realizing the stupidity of the situation she herself has created. Simply murmurs, I can't be sure if he's 21. The manager glances between her, me, the 12-pack of Coors, her, me, the 12-pack again, her again, and back to me before telling me to just take the pack on the house and come back tomorrow. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but I never worked with her again. The next story is titled Yes, He is African, and yes, he is also a scientist. This is my wife's work, her anecdote, not mine. With COVID, my wife's work, which is a local biolab, had hired a security firm to make sure people are conforming to COVID protocol. She works in the lab portion of the site. There is also a loading dock. Many of the workers in the loading dock are first-generation immigrants, and many of them are African. A newish employee to the lab, a scientist, was trying to get in the lab entrance, and the security guard wouldn't let him in. Told him to go on the loading dock entrance. The guy had ID proving he was a lab person, and he still wouldn't be let in. No one was present to help him out, and as a new employee he didn't have anyone's number that was at the site yet. So he has to go on the back door, like it was the Ducking 50s or something. The next story is titled You're Not the Boss's Kid. I don't really know if it belongs here, if my parents have a business, and when I was around 12/13 I used to help out a lot in there. It was usually after school when I came, but whenever I walked in there, and there were some new workers, they never really questioned it. So one day after school I went inside and I pressed the bell and saw a man, probably like 35 years old or something. I'm not sure since it's a bit blurry what he looked like, and he looked confused. So I look him in the eyes and he just stands in front of the door and looks at me, and then he closes the door, leaving me outside. Great. So I ring the bell again and I just hear what was probably his voice, since I didn't know that voice. Don't open the door, and I hear my aunt, who also works there, just say, why? And he went there, some idiotic girl probably begging for money. Reminder that the wall is pretty thin. So I ring the bells the third time and my aunt pops out and lets me in. I greet her, give her a kiss, and go straight to my parents' office. Exactly in front of their office, the guy was there again. He told me I couldn't go in because you can't go inside, they have a meeting. There was a window and my father sat in front of my mother, because he probably needed help with some documents or something. My mom's pretty much the brain of the two. So I said I don't really think they're having a meeting because those are both my parents. No, they aren't. I have seen their kids a lot of times since I work here since a long time. I didn't really remember how long he said, but it sure as heck wasn't believable. At this point, 12-year-old me didn't care anymore and I just went right in. I came to my parents, looked at me, tried to greet me, and then that worker just grabbed me arm and told them, "I'm really sorry, this kid tried to steal of multiple workers, already I'll throw her out." My mom then told him to stop, which he already did, and told him, "Don't you dare lie about my daughter stealing," and then throw her out. He was shocked, looked at me, I already had my school ID in hand, and had that idiot I was right smile. He stared at me in disbelief and stormed right out. My parents fired him. They afterwards brought some cake for the workers, because he already stole some bags of rice, but they had no proof. Edit. A lot of you got confused about why he said I was stealing. I think he probably already stole stuff from others. The only thing I know about is the rice and a calculator, because my parents didn't tell me when I was younger what was happening. The next story is titled "No Ma'am. I am not impersonating myself, I am definitely me." This one takes place on a late afternoon, shipped just before the dinner rush, so we had a manager and 2 servers in, including myself. An important note for this story is that I used to have my hair dyed a bright blue color for a lot of my time working at the shop, but had recently dyed it back to natural brown as I was making uni applications, and it was generally seriously high maintenance when you had to wash it every day as the color ran out way too fast. So we're all going about our business, taking orders and getting ready for the dinner rush. This lady comes in with her kids. Now, she's a regular. Not a friendly regular, but we typically see her a few times a week. I take her order and my colleague starts making up her food. As I'm packing it up, she seems annoyed. So I ask if everything is okay with the order, as I'm concerned I've made a mistake and would rather rectify it then and there. She sighs and tells me that it's fine, but she misses having her hair taken by the girl with the blue hair, as she was much faster and politer than me, and asked me if she still worked there and what days she works. My service has not changed. I'm still doing my job the same as usual. The only difference is my dyed hair. I'm also the only one with unnatural colored hair, so she is definitely talking about me. Now, as well as being able to tell from my face, as most of our hair is covered by a hat anyway, who I am. We also wear name tags. Our names come up on the register when we take orders, and they print on the receipts as a way of identifying who took an order in the event of a problem. So I say, "Thank you so much for the compliment. That's actually me, I just dyed my hair, but I appreciate the comments on my service this time and will try to improve. I've got another 7 hours left on this shift. I am super polite, as the last thing I want is for this woman to kick off right before the dinner rush when I'm still stuck here all night." She goes nuts, telling me that I'm committing fraud, that she is going to have me fired and possibly arrested, and even trying to rope my colleague in to admit I'm lying, at which point they slip out back to locate the manager who was cooking. How could I claim that I, with my terrible service, is the lovely girl who usually served her? Her kids are there also trying to insist I'm clearly the same person, but she just keeps pushing them out the way and yelling that Mummy is handling this. I do not have the energy for this crap. I try apologizing. I even offer her a free drink for the inconvenience just to get her out of the store. She's not having it, and asks for my manager. He has been standing at the back with my co-worker, literally pissing himself with laughter at this woman for the last 2 minutes, but puts on his customer service face and comes over. She starts demanding I'm fired. He just lets her rant for a while, then asks if she happens to have a receipt from a previous transaction with the girl she wanted to be served by. She pulls one out of her bag triumphantly, literally with a flourish, thinking she's got her way and proved me to be the scoundrel she thinks I am. It has my name at the top, clear as day. He points to my name tag and has her read out the name on the receipt and the name on the tag. She gets super flustered, but is way too far gone now to admit her mistake. Starts claiming I've stolen someone else's tag and that she'll have me arrested for identity theft. My manager at that point is totally done and tells her to get out and don't come back without a better attitude. For the next 9 months I worked there, as we're the best/only fast food place in the local area. She stands outside sending her very embarrassed kids in twice a week so they can get still a takeaway. And of course, it's England in the winter. It rains a lot. The next story is titled "This Is My Painting." So on to my story. I was invited to create 5 or so paintings to be hung for a special event at a local art gallery. Other artists would also be showing their work, and to expect that I could sell all my pieces. I paint almost exclusively on 18x24 canvases and only paint on other sized canvases for a request or if I feel inspired by something. I live in the West/Southwest, and there is never a shortage of things for me to find inspiration from. Also, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and so I have those memories to draw from as well. So I painted a greenish woodland scene, a swampy scene, a desert scene, a seascape and river scene with tall sandstone cliffs. The river scene is what this story is about, and so I'll go into more detail about it. It is a faster-moving river that begins in the left top quadrant of the canvas, winds down to the middle of the canvas and loops back to the lower left quadrant. On the right-hand side are sandstone bluffs with some vegetation, and there is a spit of land that allows for the river to loop around on the left. That spit of land has trees, bushes, driftwood, rocks, what you would normally find along a river in the Pacific Northwest. However, the scene is more attuned to the Southwest with the desert-like sandstone cliffs and rocks. The whole painting is truly a figment of my imagination and parts got painted over and repainted a few times before I got what I wanted. This is important. I used Douglas fir trees on my spit of land, none of which grow in the Southwest, and I used cacti to break up the rock on the right side. I also used huckleberry and rhododendron bushes on the spit, both native to the PNW and can't be found in the SW. This is also important. The painting is called Wandering. So the day of the opening is at hand, and I never dress up much. For me, a pair of pressed jeans, cowboy boots, a white shirt with tie, and I'm all set. I'm 60-ish and gravity has forced my body such that all that nice muscle in my shoulders has drooped down to around my waist. My wife still loves me, but I sometimes think she longs for the younger me. Most everyone else is dressed up, and that includes my wife, who loves these events as an excuse to dress to the nines. You ladies know what I mean: long evening gown, matching clutch purse, matching high heels, hair all done up, 3 hours before the makeup mirror. JK on the makeup mirror, I think it was only 2 hours and a quarter. We wandered around the different exhibits, and I marvel at the talent that is before me. It's hard for me to accept that I am any good, even when people tell me, because, well, it's just hard. My wife's siblings are always begging me for paintings to hang on their walls, but I try to put them off and let my wife decide. So I'm standing in front wandering and finding all the places where I think there is a mistake and how the lighting isn't quite right when this woman walks up to stand next to me. Don't you hate it when the artist just finds some picture on the internet and copies it? I just saw this picture on a magazine in the airport not too long ago, she said in a high nasal tone. I looked at her, and she too was done up to the nines with a glass of something bubbly in her hand. She looked to be in her 30s, but then I am a terrible judge of age. Her face looked like someone had smashed it in with a canoe paddle. Indeed, I asked. Yeah, I see it everywhere. Artists nowadays have no imagination, they just copy. This woman wore a dark blue pantsuit with a white blouse and probably stood 5'2" with an extra third grader around her waist. I'm not condemning her for having the equivalent of a third grader's weight around her waist, it's just an observation. And you're sure you saw this on a magazine cover somewhere? I asked. Oh yes, I'm very sure of that. The reason I ask is that if you notice, this is a southwestern scene, but there are elements in it that you would not find in the Southwest, like those trees and these bushes, I gently probed. She looked closer and said, Oh no, I see those everywhere around here. I think I might even have some growing in my own yard. I thought to myself, she's delusional or high or tripping on LSD or something. Just then my wife shows up and gives me my water as she sips her bubbly drink. What do you think of the lighting? She asks. Maybe a little soft for this one, I'm not sure. My wife went from facing the painting to facing me. She started, grabbing my chin, so that I was now looking at her. Where are you? When you say you're not sure, that's my cue that you are far, far away in another galaxy. Before I could answer, this other lady murmurs, and this price. Where do these artists get that anybody is going to pay that price for a copy of something else? Katie's eyes got big around, and her head cocked to one side as she looked around my shoulders at the woman on the other side of me. You think it's overpriced, do you? Overpriced. A 10-year-old could make this. What does this artist do? Rip out pictures from magazines and then just copies them. Really, no imagination at all. There should be a law banning this kind of ineptitude, the woman said with disgust in her voice. Katie seemed to falter, and then her eyes got big around, and I tried to shush her. It didn't work. It just so happens that I know this artist, and I know for a fact that he did not copy it from some magazine. The odds are that there is a magazine out there with this picture in it are, You have a better chance of winning the lottery twice than you would finding a magazine with this between its folds. The lady came around to face Katie, and as I've said before, Katie is 40-ish but looks 20-ish. I dare say, young lady, that you aren't even old enough to understand art, let alone tell me what I've seen and what I've not seen. And I dare say, young lady, that I'm probably older than you are, and I've seen more art in the last 20 years than you've seen in your entire lifetime. I've met more artists, more famous artists, and more up-and-coming artists than you'll ever know. When I say this is an original work, this is an original work. Katie was starting to get fired up, and I didn't want the gallery owner to have to ask her to leave, which has happened once before. My lady does like to defend her man. Just as the lady was about to retort something, another artist came up and said, "Lady, there is no way you've seen this as some photograph in any magazine. There are elements here that just simply don't belong, and that is exactly why this cannot be a copy. Those trees don't belong, those bushes don't belong, and even the river itself doesn't belong. There is no river like that anywhere in the desert. All the rivers around us are slow and lazy, and this is fast and rushing. I think this artist must have been high on crack when he painted this." He gave me a very obscure nudge in the ribs when he said that last part, because we've admired each other's work, and I have one of his paintings in my house, and he has one of my paintings in his house. The difference between us is that his paintings start at 6 figures and hang all over the world, and mine just don't. "You don't know what you're talking about," the lady said. "You're just some hippie living in some commune who hopes to make a few bucks on the pity of somebody else's hard work." I couldn't help it, I laughed. I turned and looked at this woman and said, "He," pointing to the guy that jumped to my rescue, "has paintings in the White House. He has paintings in every major art museum in the US and parts of the world. He has a waiting list of a decade for his paintings. His house alone is probably worth more than what you will ever make in your lifetime." Although, to give her due credit, he did look like he probably lived in some commune high in the peaks. Writing this, I won't tell you his name because I haven't asked him if I can include him in this story. While I'm sure you wouldn't mind, he likes stuff like this. I'd rather wait and update at a later day. So this lady is again about to say something when gallery owner comes over and puts a hand on my friend's shoulder, and she asks, "Distinguished artist, how are we doing tonight? I'm so glad that you decided to come up the mountain and visit us." The lady's mouth opened like the gape of a tunnel at the name dropping. I was just explaining to this lady how OP here could never have painted this from a photograph, as one just does not exist. She couldn't have seen this in a magazine, as the elements just don't exist in nature the way he's painted them. Laughing, gallery owner asked, "Do you remember OP about a couple of years ago? You had that one painting that had a coyote in the brush, and the limbs made it look like it had antlers." "Oh, I remember that," Katie said excitedly. OP wanted to fix that, and I wouldn't let him. "Do you remember the man who swore that he's got coyotes with antlers running around his chicken farm?" Gallery owner asked. Distinguished artist looked at me and asked, "Were you on drugs?" He teases me about this even though he knows I'm seriously against that sort of thing. "I mean, I don't even drink alcohol. You didn't paint this," the lady said lightly. "He sure did." Katie jumped in, so excited. I watched him from his blocking colors to his signature. I love to watch him paint. I watched as the lady slinked off, and when she was gone, I asked gallery owner, "Who was that?" Shaking her head from side to side, she said, "She's bat crap crazy Karen who thinks she knows all there is to know about art and paintings, and she just trashes this artist, and then that one just to get her kicks in. I don't know why I let her into these things. She never buys anything." Well, I know this story didn't have that explosive ending you all clamor for, but it's one of the few Karen or near Karen stories I have. I sold all of my paintings, and the city bought one of distinguished artist's paintings because, well, he is just superior at what he does, and they were discounted for the showing. When we got home, Katie just had to tell our daughter the whole story, and daughter said, "Isn't he always doing something like that? Putting in stuff that doesn't belong?" Katie gave me a look from the side of her face and said, "That's how you can tell it never came from a photograph." If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.